I think what Justin brought, that we used to go on road trips at least once a year in the past. And I think COVID put a slight pause to that, but I think we're going to start doing that again. The thing with the airport, you've seen a little bit of it. We ever get back out there, we're starting, as we said last week, about $40 million of construction out there. Whether it be to increase corporate or private aviation, or for the flight school, or to increase development around the airport. We don't have commercial air service at the moment, but that's just a small, very small part of what our airport ever was. But we'll try to expand as much as we possibly can and see how busy we can get that airport, which is a much needed gem to this area. So we'll keep that in mind. Our last regular meeting was August. As always, Justin put the videotape of that on the Eastgate's website under the gab icon. All right, so for today, our guest speaker for today is Grant. You have the floor.
All right, hello everyone. A little while ago, I talked about we worked on our safety plan, finishing it up. Safety plan has been completed. It is up on our website. And more exciting for me right now going into it is put some additional, like a dashboard with some different tools and information that anybody can view and look at some of the stuff that's out there and go into some more details about some of the stuff, which if it's on our website, it's under the programs, transportation, safety planning overview. Here it gives you a PDF, which is the full PDF document that is the report it's put together. And then there's a view the safety site. So just for everybody to know, is this was done through the Safe Streets for All program. We had gotten funding to do a comprehensive safety plan. We had a local road safety plan, but for a lot of the new funding coming out, they're trying to be a little bit more broad with a lot of different focuses of it, especially stuff like tying in equity as a component of looking at safety throughout the region. So this was sort of upgrading our plan to meet this criteria. When you come here, it's this thing. It's just first page is just a little bit about the site. It's got the PDF is actually embedded right into the site as well. It then gets into looking at some different stuff, like you get a page up here, top hit, which is performance measures. And this comes up and it starts, you get to view a lot of the different data for Mahoning and Trumbull County. So right now it's showing data from 2008 to 2023. Gives you a little bit of information just about 2023's data with the 9.1 thousand crashes, 30 fatal crashes, and 34 fatalities. That one can change just because of the fact that there can be multiple fatalities with any crash. So that's why there is a difference between fatal crashes and fatalities. It's got a chart showing by the year for how many of the different types of crashes there are, going all the way back to 2008. And then when you get down here, there's just some different bar graphs showing the number of fatal crashes, serious injury crashes, which those are the ones that most of our focus is on. We're looking at a lot of the safety type stuff. There's those fatal and serious injuries. The focus on the serious injuries is one of the things that's a little bit newer with this report we worked on. I mean, all the crashes have always been looked at. Serious has been one of the things, but one of the things that was done through this was looking at the fact that a serious injury is just a small step away from being a fatal. So why don't we look at that as consider them almost fatals, basically, and tie that a lot more in and hit those as being just as important. So that gives you all the information throughout each of the years going back. It's also got, you can select by different counties. It does have some stuff like Columbiana, Geauga, Portage are on here just because of the fact that I got a few crashes that are like on the county line that in the ODOT data is considered to be Columbiana because it happened on the south side of the road. So it fell into Columbiana, but still put in there because it's still on a road that borders us and I think it's still important. And then you can also even look at different communities and go in here and select individual townships and get the numbers for that township or that village. And so you can sort of refine the data down a little bit and look at what specific areas a little bit more through here as well. And again, still all of it going back to 2008. And then if you want, there is also a thing up here for year, which can be set up so that it's only showing specific years, just to make it where your focus is a little bit more easy to read and look at. Next interesting here is the crash location maps. This is the 2018 to 2022 data is shown on here. It's showing every crash sorted out by the severity. It's got down here again, it's got some of the different stuff like the crash severity by year broken out. The crash type is also one of the different things down here, so you can see what percentage of each different crash type there was. But the interesting thing with this one, though, is if you have an interest in an area, there's a little box up on the top right that turns it into a cursor that you can select, and it'll let you select everything within that area. So you can select all the crashes, and then it sort of highlights and gives you an idea at least of where all those crashes are at.
Are reports from police and the sheriffs and the highway patrol from accidents, are they the source of this information?
Yes, so there are some requirements for what police and stuff have to report to the state through the Ohio Department of Public Safety. I believe it's basically anything that's got a damage value of $1,000 or greater that gets flagged. That way they don't hit, a little scrape that never gets reported, doesn't get in. But if something's happened, it has to be reported to the state, and they do file their actual OH1 crash reports that they have to fill out. Those get put in there, and then that data is what's used to generate everything else through here.
Hey, Greg, can we do a little test run on something?
Absolutely.
Can you go to City of Hubbard, please? And it's the Y intersection there at 304 and 62 and 7. Yeah. Perfect.
So when you do select, there is a button down at the bottom left, which it would automatically do, which is a filter button that cuts out everything else. So
That's a bad intersection.
Mm-hmm. It's a very confusing thing that I, along with every other mayor in the city, has inherited since 19 whatever. But I know that I've had discussions with Eastgate about potentially the concept of investigating a roundabout there.
yeah, I mean, you've definitely got some injuries showing up there.
Yeah.
Getting up to 20 crashes in 2020, and that within that, it's
Yeah. I didn't think that crash data was that. It's the near crashes that literally cause the most chaos for people, because our school is right there. We have multiple plazas. There's just a lot of traffic in and out, and trying to change everybody's idea. And so we've done a lot of different lane markings to try to help that. But this is about what I figured. So thank you.
I mean, the near misses are always a problem because there's no way it's getting reported.
You don't
So
know.
it's,
Yeah.
we don't know. There's some effort. One of the things we've been looking a lot more at is they refer to it as systemic safety planning, which is more of, you look at your road network, you find out what type of areas are causing problems, and then you're looking a lot more at what are the features there, what are the number of lanes, what's the width, what's the speed limit, all these different variables that go into it, and then figuring out what the common denominators are, and then being able to take that and look at the rest of your network and go, look, this area's had a lot of accidents. These are the road conditions. This area over here has had a couple of accidents, but none severe, but it's got very similar road conditions. There might be concern that there's likely to be a serious crash coming out of it. So one of the next big exciting things coming out here is the high injury network priorities. This was where the main focus for what a lot of the stuff we're trying to get out of the plan comes down to, which is they identified all of the areas that had the most severe injuries, fatal injuries, and then tying in some stuff like the equity considerations. And we met with communities and we had the public surveys, and also including the fact if comments were made about these locations, that also was something else that went into it. So they're looking at two similar locations. If the community came out and said that this was a problem, or the mayor said, hey, we've been getting complaints, that gives it a little bit of an at least advantage towards our rankings for it. So they ranked all these different segments and intersections that came up as the different problems. So, and then they're broken out by, the all mode urban intersections, the all mode rural intersections. So that's any type of traffic. Then also a bike pedestrian for rural and urban intersections. And then for the segments, there's an all mode for the urban segments. And then, the all mode is for all segments, not just the urban, and then the bike ped urban segments and bike ped rural segments. So the different road segments got looked at with a little bit different criteria, because of the fact of urban segments end up being a lot more closed in. So we looked at smaller chunks of roadway as opposed to whereas in the rural, we'd look at bigger areas. So the map on here shows all the different locations that came up as high priority for us. There also is just a plain map down at the bottom that is just the raw map with the data there. It's not this, but so this goes through, so you can click on, the all modes urban intersections, and it will zoom in, and then it actually gives you our ranking lists over here on the right for where everything got ranked at for within the all mode urban intersections. And then within this, you can click on it. Fortunately for these ones, it will not save to not zoom out, but yet, so highlights it, shows you where that intersection is. And then over in here, you get some information, the fatal serious injury score, which is the number of fatal and serious injuries that occurred within the 5 years that we looked at. And then it also gives you a potential countermeasure. And then some of them might even have a cost that will go into it. So what the consultants did is they looked at a lot of these different locations, and they looked through the data and look at it. And, some of the locations they would look at and go, there's not something common necessarily going on. It needs an additional study. Other locations, you might come up and see that there's a lot of crashes. They're all of them though are rear ends. So what are some countermeasures though that can be applied for that specific situation, and how can that type of stuff be negated easily? Or so this one came up as a potential countermeasures was add a protected left turn signal phase. So something through there was just popped up that left turns were an issue, probably a lot of angle crashes. So there's a quick, easy solution. I'm gonna have to check. There is a cost estimate for all of these, which is not showing for some reason right now, and I'm gonna have to fix that. But so within this, we've got all of these different locations that are coming up as priorities. And for a bunch of them, we've got suggested countermeasures along with estimated costs. So the communities that do have these locations within them are able to go through and say, look at this and have an idea of where to start with for this stuff.
I'm looking at Lucius and South. You have a lot of bars in that area. Are drunk drivers, impaired drivers causing a lot of accidents in that area?
It's entirely possible. That stuff is stored within the data behind it. We do have information on how many are impaired, how many are drugs.
Is that Coconut Grove?
Yeah.
Yes. Coconut Grove, yeah.
They have a lot of bars on Mahoning Avenue. I'm not sure exactly where Whitney is, whether there are bars right there, but I thought I saw Mahoning and Whitney.
4.
Whitney
Yeah,
is
number 4.
Like lower Mahoney, yeah.
Midlothian and Lemoyne, of course, that's the exit from 680 there.
Yeah.
Is there a lot of access there?
Mhm.
Was it on there?
I think these are high accident
Yeah.
areas you're
Oh,
showing,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Yes, they are. So, yeah,
Grant, do you have any examples where countermeasures might have been installed in the before and after data? Like say you put a turn lane in or something along that, or you put a traffic light. Do you have any examples where you might put a countermeasure in 4 or 5 years ago where you might have some nice population of before and after data?
yes, we do. I don't have anything that I could pull up right this second for that type of stuff. I know one of the ones actually that I know that we did look at recently was we only looked at just the first year or two of data for the up in Warren when they added in the dividers going down the lane right at 82. They put those divider lines in and changed configurations around there. And I know at least that location, we had gone back and looked, and in like the first 3 months, 6 weeks, 3 months, something like that, there was a small jump in the number of crashes. But then in the next 10 months after that, there weren't any. So the first, we at least were able to see at least the data was starting to show that there was a little bit of a small change to learn there, and then people figured it out, and it actually was looking like, at least when we had checked then, that it was providing a safer environment there. But yeah, we do look at some of these things. We go back and we look and compare them. But I would have to get some of that pulled up.
It's probably too soon for some of these roads. We're giving road diets.
Yeah, usually you want to look at least 3 to 5 years after is preferable. At least 3 years, just 'cause
What's the oldest one we did? Wick. Wick was the first.
yeah, that's something I'm definitely looking and get the information to you for and check out what comes out of it. But some of the big things that was the idea is that these communities now have a list of problem areas with a at least a path forward on how these should be looked at, whether it's additional study needed or different suggestions that could be tried at least to push forward. So we also have a safety data GIS atlas I've been working on. Comes in, it's a little bit more of it's a little trickier interface at least. Been trying to find a nice medium between so easy everyone can use it, but still get some nice features. But it pops up. It's got 4 different maps that have been put together, such as the safety projects. Select the map, and it comes up, and the map shows you this is all the different projects going on that are that have been done in the last couple of years. But what gets a little bit more interesting here is the buttons down here that allow a little plus sign allows you to actually add on some other data sets also that have been created by me and selected to go onto here, so that you can get our crashes. So click on that and load that up, and now it has that same map of all the project locations. Now the crashes are overlaid on top of it. So that way we try to make it something that people can look at and pull up different maps on different themes or concepts within the safety, but then also letting them pull in some individual data points so that they can look at stuff however they may want to.
Is all this on the Eastgate website?
Yep, and it's accessible. Anybody can get to it. Shows right here is under the programs, transportation, safety planning overview. And then that takes you to the main safety website. And then it's right at the top is a view of this site. Gives you right access to it. The one thing I will say is this is by no means intended to be a final product. And I don't really intend for there to ever actually be a final product, because I'm going to be updating the data. The performance measure type stuff is going to be constantly being updated. But I also am hoping to hear from people in the different communities or governments that stuff that they want or would like to be able to have access to, and trying to be able to also tie some of that anything else in the communities feel like they may need. So at the same time, if anything is suggested something that's being overlooked or should be included, or if it can be, I'm always open to try and figure out what else will make something interesting and usable. So 2 more sections on here. One is our focus reports. These are all top of this thing. There's a location studies, safe communities mapped, and regional maps. Start with safe communities maps really quickly. Mahoney and Trumbull County have safe communities. They are groups that meet, talk about safety. They do fatal reviews. It's from different people are involved from different places all over. Engineers, hospitals get involved. I decided to start putting together for every one of the quarterly meetings a map on some sort of data point from the previous year. So all of these different things are up here, such as motorcycle related crashes, which you come on here and it pops up and it's just a PDF map showing the hotspots for motorcycle related crashes in Mahoney County for 2019, and then also highlights out where all of the fatal accidents were for that year within the motorcycles. So it's whenever we put them together for all these different meetings, trying to get this extra data out there, I just had them start being uploaded as well. Location studies are different places that we've looked at over time for different reasons, putting together little quick reports on them. And then those have just been included as well. So they're broken up also by listing out what community they're in, where the location is, what years of data was looked at. So then these click, they pop up, give you a report, number of crashes. It's got 14 pages of information is on each one of these. Summary of information, map of crashes, and breaks down lots of different tables that are put together for each of these locations.
So this is like, we've never had this before. This is like a available tool that you just completed.
Yeah, a lot of these type of reports are things that when
Did you
something comes
compile
out,
it? Yeah.
compiling it, putting it up there to be accessible, and trying to make it so it can be used. I mean, it's more people that are looking at it, more people are looking at the safety issues, a better chance we'll have of fixing them.
It's really good to have all this information in one place.
Yeah.
This way you don't have to go to different police departments and look up police reports for each accident.
And we have our 7th Ward Citizens Coalition, which represents the 7th Ward of Youngstown, for instance. And this would be, when people talk about accidents in the ward, we can say, look at this data here. It's right here at your fingertips. You can analyze it better and gain some understanding.
Yeah.
And then you have a factual basis to go to City Hall and say, we've had 20 crashes here in 3 months at this intersection or whatever. Yeah. And you can get action from City Hall based on numbers and not just somebody's hunch.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there is the crash mapping thing here, which is like I said, which for what you're talking about also falls pretty well with at least some of that of being able to show that location, showed those crashes. One thing I didn't show is if you click on a crash, it pops up and gives you some information. Year for that crash was 2020. PDO means property damage only, no injury, crash type animal. I said there's more behind the scenes of what goes into the stuff, but the full crash database is so big that it's cost prohibitive to put all the information online for the storage stuff. So I had to it's trimmed down to some of the stuff that's relevant for a lot of that type of stuff.
A question that I have,
Yes.
speed. Vienna Township, I believe most of we started using the speed cameras. In 1 month, we got 926 that we're going to issue tickets to. There were a lot more, but sometimes you can't read the license plate and other things like that. Does any of this show speed-related crashes, excessive speed? I know that our highest speed was over 90 miles an hour in a 60-mile-an-hour zone. So is there anything on there that would show anything for excessive speed areas?
So on there, within like the crash mapping, there is not anything on there. It's not one of the things that was included for that aspect. That's it. We do have information for that. The speed related is one of the fields that actually does come up on there. Do have at least, one of the quarterly ones actually I do for the safe communities actually is speed related crashes. So there are some of those as well up there, and so the data is there. I can go in and work with it to get something out if there's something that needs to be looked at, and if something comes up that's should be looked into.
Thank you.
Regional maps is just some stuff like there's a safety 2-pager that's out there that's actually from before I was doing safety stuff, but it's just put up there. Actually, it was when I started. And then our systemic funding for 2022 was put together, which was there's a funding source out there for the systemic funding, which looks at some certain road conditions for what qualifies. And I just went through and sort of mapped out throughout every community which ones were the roads that would qualify, so that it'd be easily accessible for the communities to be able to look into that. The last page on here is additional resources, which is just I've started putting together basically a library of links to additional information I think is going to be helpful, such as the highway safety improvement, the ODOT's highway safety improvement, the page to the USDOT, ODOT Safe Routes to Schools, the Ohio Traffic Safety Office. This is definitely going to grow more once I want to make sure it's well organized. I don't want to just throw a bunch of links up there, so I'm trying to figure out the best way to put the links and not be just a overwhelming amount of information, but it'll be continuing to grow, and hopefully there'll be more tabs as more ideas come up for something that will be helpful for anyone to see. Does anybody have any questions about any of that or any safety stuff for that matter?
Can you show us the part about pedestrian safety? Pedestrian crashes?
I actually don't know if I have a good way of pulling up pedestrian crashes, which is
Maybe that's priority network.
oh yeah, well, that there is that. Yeah, so yeah, you come here and they see this does have our high priority for the bike and pedestrian stuff. So also one thing on here, at least I did want to show on all these priority ones, there is a refine by community button up here at the top that will let you go in and select just one community to shrink the list down if you would like.
I see Market Indianola, Brookwood. Brookwood's been closed off there.
Yes, I used to live right by there. Like when they were starting that project, I only lived a few blocks away. I was able to walk over during phone calls and look at the location while talking to them. But the data we looked at was based off of 5 years. So there were crashes that occurred there, and there has even been one crash since they closed it there that was a fatal. One of the things that is going to be a next step that I'm wanting to also do is going to sort of be a statuses of these projects. I know that is a perfect example, at least, of a project has happened. Here's something that's being done on this location. I know under the all-motor urban intersections, this northwest and southern, our very first one on our list up here. They actually, in the last 2 years, made changes, 2-3 years, made changes to the intersection. And this hit the top of our list based off of the crashes from before, because the crashes actually have completely bottomed out. There's been hardly any crashes since then. So I want to have sort of a marking them off as stuff gets done or changes happen as well, and trying to also be able to show you what's happening, where stuff is going on.
You still have a traffic light at South and Lucius.
I think.
Yeah, I think there is one.
Okay,
I
that's
was
good.
just down the street
It's
the
there.
other day.
You know, I've talked about this issue before, and I kind of brought a little visual here. If you're walking at night or cycling at night, you got to be seen by the motorists. You know, one way to be seen is to wear something really loud like this. And I didn't just bring this here as a prop. You know, I'm actually wearing it tonight because I came here on the WRTA bus. That's how I'm going home. I'm going to have a little bit of walking, but I have to cross a few streets, wait, you know, and get on the bus. And WRTA even has an audio recording on its buses that says, if you are traveling at night, please wear bright clothing or use the flashlight on your cell phone if you're waiting for a bus to alert the driver that you want to board. You know, and there's just so many serious and fatal injuries that are caused to pedestrians, especially if they're wearing dark clothes and walking at night, especially if they're walking in the street, not on the sidewalk. And in some places, of course, there are no sidewalks. I think we need an action item on this. I mean, the data is very good, and you've given us a great tool by putting all this information in one place where we can find it. But I really think we need to develop a printed brochure, excuse me. And that brochure should be placed in libraries, homeless shelters, soup kitchens, WRTA. It can be all over the place, you know, and it's not just for homeless people. It's for anybody that's going to be out there at night walking. And if you check out, you know, the coroner's office, they have sadly very many cases of pedestrians who have been hit by cars and killed, especially in the wintertime when there's a lot of snow on the sidewalks and piled up along the curbs, and people are walking in the streets. So I think you need to find somebody to design that brochure. And since we're, you know, past the time change and the days are getting shorter, I think there's no better time than the present to do that.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's definitely a good idea for something to look into. And I believe you've mentioned the concern with the homeless being in the high visibility stuff in the past.
Yes.
It is actually written up on my wall in my office right now. It's one of the things I've had some talks about of trying to, been doing a little bit of pricing out the cost, at least, of reflective vests with the intention of seeing if it's something that we can figure out a way of getting some funding for to provide to homeless shelters. So your comment actually has spurred that, at least in something that I've been looking at trying to figure out a way to make happen.
So people here are listening, and I guess just because you don't see action right after you talk in one of these meetings doesn't mean that nobody heard you. Something may eventually come of it, but it might be weeks or months later. And yeah, I think the distributing the vests for free at places like the Rescue Mission would be a very good idea to protect pedestrians at night.
Yeah, I actually had a thought for that meeting about the idea of trying to do something with police, of being able to have them provide them to, you know, people that they saw out at night that weren't well marked out. But of course, the concern comes of police trying to drive up next to somebody when it's dark out may cause extra issues. And then you mentioned the homeless shelter stuff with your idea, and it's like that fits a lot with what I was wanting to do, and your idea was spurred a better way of actually getting it moving towards that. So,
and of course, you know, police, obviously, they have a right to stop somebody who is clearly in danger because that person is not visible at night, especially if they're walking in the road. But then, you know, the person walking in the road may or may not realize the officer is trying to help him and not create a confrontation, you know, and that wouldn't necessarily be clear at night. And I guess that's the problem, and maybe they should be distributed also at the police station, at the rescue mission, soup kitchens, places like that, and maybe better distributed in the daytime.
Any other questions?
See. All right. All right, we can have a meeting, next, December. Because that's the, general policy board, fourth quarter meeting. Anybody that, let me see, we have our two reps for Cumberland County. Hook up with, Justin to again, go over what we're going to discuss. You know,
I don't see him online either.
Justin did put our schedule for 2025 on the bottom of the second page agenda. Yeah, we'll just briefly review that.
Yeah, absolutely. And the only other thing I'll mention about General Policy Board, obviously, those are open to the public as well. Same as all of our meetings. So if you ever feel like going to those, feel free, let me know. I can get you any of the additional information. This one coming up in December is pretty exciting. As many of you may know, we recently had our federal certification review with US DOT, the Federal Transit Administration. So representative, our kind of liaison with the Federal Highway Administration will be there to kind of give their final report on our certification review, which they have notified us that we passed. So we meet all of our requirements. He's going to go through some of the highlights, the things we do exceptionally well, the things that, maybe could use some improvement. And there's also a third category of things that we're actively doing wrong, which we received no comments category, thankfully. So a lot of praise for the staff here who make sure that that is done correctly and appropriately and by the books, day in and day out. Grant's a shining example of that with putting together tools like he just showed off that when he presented that at our TAC, I think at least 3 people fell out of their chairs.
One person did ask a question just to tell me it was amazing, which I was telling everybody in my family about that night. So
But I'll go through today's TAC meeting real quickly. It was a little bit of an abbreviated agenda, but a lot of information. First up, Kathy Zook, our Appalachian Program Manager, talked about some student-related programs that the Federal Appalachian Regional Commission puts on. One is the Appalachian Entrepreneurship Academy, which is a 2-week event at Appalachian State University, where high school students can apply to go to this free of charge. ARC covers all expenses for the students to attend this Entrepreneurship Academy. But there is an application process, and this is throughout the entire Appalachian region, so 13 states. So it's slightly competitive, but not out of the realm of possibility for our local students to be able to participate. In the past, we've had students attend and be a part of this. So if you know any middle or high school students, these two programs are really tremendous, a great experience for them. They take place in mid-July of next year, but the application deadline is December 6th. So I will, in the meeting summary, link to more information for the Appalachian Entrepreneurship Academy and the Appalachian STEM Academy. 2 different programs. They have slightly different eligibilities. Some are just for high school students, some are for middle school students, and some are for high school teachers. So if you know anybody that fits into those categories, feel free to share this information with them. Really great opportunity through the ARC there. Kathy also covered one of the federal ARC's funding programs called POWER. The POWER grant program is funding that's made available at the federal level for communities that are impacted by the downturn in the coal industry, of which our area is. So our local organizations are eligible for this funding. In this round, the Youngstown Business Incubator was successful at receiving $1.795 million for a project they're calling the Rising Tides Initiative, which is an effort partnership between them and Bright Energy Innovators up in Warren to work with local manufacturers on comprehensive technology, education, and other workforce development aspects of that project. So really exciting to see them be able to continue to pull down this type of federal funding to keep some great programs moving forward. Moving on is the fiscal year 2024 obligation report, the annual listing of projects with federal funds. So Joey Kemp, one of our newer employees who kind of filled in Steven Zubik's role on the transportation funding side, talked about and kind of gave an overview of all of the upcoming transportation projects that have received federal funding. What I'll do is it's a pretty visual presentation, kind of a lot of charts and things like that, but I'll make sure that that information is also attached to the meeting summary so you could flip through that, and take a look at those projects. Really covers everything in Mahoning and Trumbull counties. I believe Mahoning County has about $67 million worth of projects upcoming in the next several years. Trumbull County slightly less than that. I would say maybe 24 million upcoming. So interesting just to see what's coming down the pipeline and what improvements are being planned. Following that up was an update to the Clean Ohio program by Stephanie Dyer. This is primarily a land conservation program, but can also be used for waterway restoration. So our district received 4 project applications and has recommended 3 of them for funding this round. 2 of those projects are from Mill Creek Metro Parks and 1 is from Trumbull County Metro Parks. The 2 from Mill Creek are the Mill Creek Wildlife Expansion Improvements in Beaver Township, as well as the Sherritt Road Wetland Protection Project in Beaver Township. And Trumbull County's project was the Braceville Nature Preserve Extension Project up in Braceville. There was $3.4 million available this round, but only $965,000 was awarded out or recommended to be awarded to those 3 projects, which means $2.5 million is going to roll over into next round. So if there are conservation projects or stream restoration projects that you have knowledge of or you feel passionately about, talk with your township trustees or your city council people and let them know there's a pot of money available for those types of projects and improvements, because that money can go a long way. And the fact that we have some rolling over on top of what our allotment will be next year means a lot of possibility. There will be, for the next round of funding, an applicant workshop, planning it for March or April of next year. So I'll keep you posted if that is something of interest to you. I'll make sure to let you all know when that's occurring. So if there's any interest, you'll be able to have all the information of how that program works and how to access those funds. And then lastly, I kind of gave a broad overview of what's going on in our planning department. A lot of times we get ourselves into a lot of work that isn't necessarily part of our day-to-day or requirements, but is work that we feel passionately about, our communities feel passionate about, and we think is going to end up in something generally positive. So I wanted to cover a lot of topics that are kind of floating out there. Maybe it's not a lot of visual things. Maybe there's not things hitting the news, but there is progress going on. So starting off with the Mahoning River restoration. Obviously, if anyone's been to Lowville or Struthers, those projects have been a resounding success and those communities are really embracing it. Lowville recently had a ribbon cutting for showing off some additional investment that they've received as a result of pursuing this type of project. And we're also helping them continue that investment through our Appalachian Community Grant Program project that's going on down there. So a lot of activity there. Struthers, same situation, working with them on their Appalachian Community Grant Program project at their river launch site to make some great improvements. But Youngstown has 3 dams. 2 of them are not of much substance. They're kind of just rock riffles, maybe some busted up concrete that effectively just slow down the water. Those two shouldn't be too difficult to deal with. The third dam up at Crescent Street is an actual form dam. The issue that we're running into a little bit is with property acquisition, we'll say, in right of way. So anybody that's worked in public projects knows that right of way is and can be a thorn in the side of a project. And this was kind of expected that we'd run into these all across the river. So we're working with the city and the consultant that's on board to work through those issues. We don't think it's going to hold it up for too long, but we just want to make sure that the wheels keep spinning on that project, and we'll still make progress. So we don't necessarily have a timeline for removal of those dams yet, just because we're working out. Does it make sense to move forward on the two that we have figured out right now and kind of slow play the third one to figure out some of the harder issues? Or should we just keep them all together? Work through that, but work through those issues and we'll definitely have more to share on that. But as we move upstream, the next one in line is Girard Dam. Obviously the biggest structure in the river, the most complicated to address. We're currently working in partnership with the Army Corps of Engineers and Ohio EPA to do some feasibility analysis on that structure. To get better cost estimates, figure out what the sediment situation is behind the dam and in the dam pool leading upstream, to get some costs on what it would take to bring that structure down and alleviate that impoundment.
Question on the Summit Street Dam. I know they were starting to remove that one in Warren. Is that totally gone now?
Totally gone.
Great.
They just set that up really last week. So they still have a little bit of like bank restoration and some stream restoration aspects to finish there, but the actual structure is gone.
So your kayak trips no longer have to end at Packard Park. You can go all the way down to Perkins Park now.
Correct. Yeah.
Safely.
Yep.
Okay, good. And I'm thinking about some of these dams. You got the Lover's Lane Dam up in Warren. That's got a notch in it that you can go through in a canoe or kayak. But really, I mean, you better know what you're doing when you go through there, and you better hit that notch just right. I always go with a group if I'm going through that, and the one at Marshall Street there, where Anthony's on the river used to be. Again, you better know what you're doing if you're going through there. I mean, there's a couple of chutes I think you can go through, but you better know where they are. And sometimes those chutes are blocked with woody debris. I guess my point is that, if we're really serious about opening up the river to recreation for the broad general public, I think we better get rid of, the Lover's Lane Dam and get rid of the Marshall Street Dam, and there are probably some others. I know your focus is on the big ones that are mandatory portages for everybody. But, I think you should do the whole job if you can get the money to do it. And then we're opening up the river for canoeing and kayaking, even by the beginners and less experienced people.
Yeah, so Marshall Street is one of the three Youngstown dams. So there's the Center Street Dam, Marshall Street, and Crescent Street. Those are the three in Youngstown.
All right, and Center Street, I think you got a narrow notch there. You got to go through between a piece of rock and a rebar.
Oh, gosh.
That's my understanding there. So let's get rid of them all.
Yeah. Yeah, so the funding is in place for the Youngstown dam removals. So those are covered. It's just working out some of those tricky details in the kind of preliminary planning stages for those projects. But within confidently the next 3 years, all three of those should be out of the river.
So the only one we absolutely got to keep, I guess, then would be the one by the Coke plant there in Warren, right? Because that's still in use.
So it is still in use, and that's actually the next one up from Girard. So Eastgate has actually received funding through the Ohio PCB board for the removal of that dam as well.
Oh, good.
Part of the funding that we received also will provide assistance to Cleveland Cliffs because they have a water intake structure there. So as part of our preliminary research, as we've done this entire Mahoning River investigation, was what's the impact to the water level? What's the impact to the current use of the river and the industry associated with that? Because we didn't want to make any decisions that would put current users of the river in a situation that was untenable. So we didn't want to put a business out of business just as a result of doing this. So we wanted to make sure that we ran those traps early so we knew what we were dealing with. So Cleveland Cliffs has been a partner this whole time. We're actively in conversation with them to figure out what their needs are, and we have some funding in place to make sure that their operations will stay stable, not only during the deconstruction of that dam, but afterwards, and make sure that they still have water for their operations. We're working with the Port Authority because they own at least a portion of that dam, if not the whole thing. But we're in the very early stages of the preliminary planning for the removal of the Warren Main Street Dam.
Any consideration for getting rid of that Lover's Lane Dam? So it's not quite so tricky. We have to go through a notch there.
Not sure where that one is.
Okay, let's see, Lover's Lane, you know where that street is. It's in Warren and it's right along the Mahoning River. The Lover's Lane Dam would be just upstream from the intersection of Lover's Lane and Northwest Boulevard, if you can find that. But I mean, if you want to start your trip, let's say just downstream from Canoe City, or you want to start from the cemetery on Lover's Lane, you got to go through that little notch in that broken dam.
Okay. Yeah, we'll have to take a look at that one and see. Yeah, we'll put that on the list to investigate.
Yeah, I think it's worth investigating that with the city of Warren, to make it less difficult to get through there. I mean, anecdotally, I'll just tell you real quick, I was on a trip last year with the Trumbull Canoe Trails, and the club's president went through the notch and I was yelling. I said, "Where do I go?" He says, go through at 1 o'clock. So you got to know exactly what angle you're going to go through at to get through that little notch in the Lover's Lane Dam.
Okay, great. A few other projects. Want to make sure we hit a bunch of these. Hopefully everyone knows that we're undertaking a regional housing strategy plan update. So looking at all of Mahoning and Trumbull counties to put together some data on our current situation with regards to housing. We're going to be rolling out the final version of that plan in early January. So Thursday, January 16th, 9:30 a.m. up at the Youngstown Main Library. We'll have the team that we brought on board to run this data for us and help us develop the strategy, kind of unveil everything. This is one of those areas where Eastgate kind of got into it because as part of the bipartisan infrastructure law, they loosened up some of the language around transportation funding, allowing agencies like ours to look at the connection between land use and transportation. So we're not just focused on what's inside the right-of-way lines and how we can move people from place to place. But we can now take into consideration what are the adjacent land uses? How does that impact the transportation facilities that we're investing in? Part of that is housing. A lot of organizations like ours across the country are taking the same tact and getting into these spaces. This was our first go at it. We wanted to perform a market value assessment, housing needs assessment, develop some strategies. As part of this, we were also coordinating with a committee called Valley Vision, which is a coordinated effort amongst economic development organizations in the region. So we kind of shifted a little bit of our focus and were able to broaden the scope a little bit to incorporate the views of developers and builders, housing finance folks into this conversation and into this planning process to give more of a complete picture of the situation. So it wasn't necessarily just from a community needs portion, but it was the other side of it is how do we supply what is needed. So we have a really robust and complete product. And at that meeting in January, we're really going to lay out the puzzle and start to build it with everyone. Because this isn't a space that we've worked in before. We don't have a playbook. This is new territory. So we're going to build this plane maybe as we're flying it. We might be pushing it down the runway to get it off the ground, but it's really exciting. It's a whole new thing that we're taking on. But we have this framework set up and we'll explain way more at that meeting. As part of that Valley Vision coordinated effort, we're also taking on a parks planning project. So we're looking at Mahoning and Trumbull counties, doing parks assessments, going to analyze that data, use some methodology to prioritize areas for investment. A lot of that Valley Vision stuff is related to a holistic view of economic development. So not looking at economic development from the traditional ways and metrics of, business development and workforce development, but how do things like arts, culture, and parks tie into workforce? Like, how do those holistic community amenities make a place more attractive for growing the economy locally? So our piece of that is parks. We've had teams go out. We've partnered with YSU, Trumbull County Combined Health District, Trumbull Metro Parks, a bunch of other organizations to go out to each park in person, run through a checklist, make sure that they're cataloging everything that's there. There is a huge matrix of data that exists, and we're going to start crunching those numbers soon to put that together. Once we prioritize those parks based on kind of this methodology that's been developed, we're going to bring on some design teams to actually do some mini park master plans and then be able to hand this over to the communities or the entities that operate and maintain those parks so that they have something in hand that says the community wants this, this is what you have, here's how you get to where you need to be, and this is what it would cost you. They have the playbook, the recipe book right in front of them, and they can just take it and run. Last thing I'll mention is, we'll get to this, I think, in just a minute. There's a lot of resolutions, but there are two that I want to call special attention to, Resolution 20 and Resolution 27. These are resolutions that essentially just authorize Eastgate to be a lead applicant for grant applications. So as part of the Inflation Reduction Act, there's a lot of new discretionary pots of money being made available. One of those is through the US EPA. It's called the Community Change Grants Program. We are a part of two coalitions working on simultaneous projects. Both of these projects are $20 million grant requests. One is a project focused on healthy homes, so rehabilitating housing with a focus on indoor air quality, energy efficiency, sustainability. And we're partnering with Youngstown Neighborhood Development Corporation as well as Trumbull Neighborhood Partnership for this project. That one in particular has a whole host of other great partners, nonprofits and other organizations focused on workforce development and community benefits that have built out this beautiful, robust project and program. Really exciting stuff, and we're really excited to put this one forward. We think this project lines up really well if the EPA wants to make a decision on more flexible and creative projects than they traditionally have in the past. They've funded some housing-related work through this program recently, so we think there is a niche for this in terms of their decision-making process. The second project is more traditional EPA, focused on stormwater and wastewater and water quality. So we partnered with the City of Youngstown, City of Struthers, and City of Girard for stormwater and wastewater project work. Much more in EPA's wheelhouse. We think if the winds shift that way in their decision thinking, we're positioned well for the region to bring down some of this federal funding through that program. But that's a lot, and that's all we talked about at TAC. So if anybody has any questions or thoughts.
It's longer than a meeting.
I know, right?
You want to mention a safety resolution?
Yeah, if you want to jump to that real quick. So resolution 28, and I'll let Grant talk about this because.
Yeah. This resolution is a resolution that we do every year. ODOT's required to set performance measures for safety for the state. For the last couple years ago, they bumped it from a 1% reduction to a 2% reduction in fatalities, fatality rate, serious injury rate, and then non-motorized fatalities and serious injuries. So they've got a statewide goal of reducing those numbers by 2%. The MPOs then are asked to either support that, or we can set our own goals if we choose. Because of the fact that our crashes are generally in the area of 30 to 50 for like the fatals, 2% is really hard for us to really be able to evaluate. It's one crash can easily blow that percentage away. So we just choose to say we're going to support ODOT. We're going to work towards helping ODOT statewide average go down, and we're going to do what we can to reduce it as much as we can. So that's what it is. It's just saying that we're going to support ODOT's efforts to reduce statewide crashes, and that's what we're going to do anyhow. So we might as well support it.
Makes sense.
And again, we vote for these online. Jessica sent out a vote. Here's one of those. You want to talk about? We're pretty straightforward.
Yeah, the other resolutions are all related to the TIP, which is our transportation funding side. These are very routine. I believe some of these are administrative modifications, which is a fancy word to say Eastgate's executive director has the authority to make these changes, small changes for projects that have previously been approved through this process. This is just kind of the notification process that formalizes any changes that were made.
All right. As far as our, we're gonna keep the applications out there for membership for next year, but as far as our sir positions, could you have time for that?
Yeah, so I have just a quick thing on the board membership and leadership positions, and then I'll talk slightly quickly about the schedule for next year. So I'll take a little bit of the blame for this because we had a bit of a busy last quarter. Here's what we've got in terms of our membership signups. You'll see a handful of folks from last year wanting to continue on. If anybody is interested in continuing, you can just let me know at this meeting and I'll add you to this list. We'll get you approved for next year. We traditionally have always kept the membership applications open through at least March of the next year, just to catch anybody that maybe didn't get the news, didn't see the email, it slipped their mind. Really easy to do. I understand it. I do it all the time. But I'm really going to make a push to start getting the word out there about the CAB in spaces that we don't typically talk about it. We've started to have more conversations with local news media about kind of increasing our presence there and talking about what we do and the structures we have set up. I think that's an opportune environment to talk about this group specifically and to start to get the word out about how this group meets and what we all do. So really kind of want to get the news out there about this committee. I think over the last couple of years, we've really transitioned our public engagement to project-based rather than more kind of centralized, starting here and then filtering out. I think we can kind of balance that teeter-totter a little bit as we move forward and kind of figure these things out. And I think this year was a bit of a reflection year too. We updated kind of our policies and procedures and talked through our bylaws again. So we have a lot more structure set than we have kind of in the past. So I will make a commitment to continue to get the word out there a little bit better than I have in the past. But if anybody else is interested kind of at this point, let me know sooner rather than later so I can get that out to the board for approving these names for next year. And then in terms of leadership, Kevin has offered to be willing to take chair again. And for our policy board representatives, we have Genevieve and Greg from Trumbull County. We'd obviously need some Mahoning County folks too. The policy board representative role, really, you're kind of just signing up to commit to attend our general policy board meetings. So there's 4 of those a year. They do occur Mondays at 10 a.m. So timing there is something to consider whether that works for you or not. But if that's something you're interested in, feel free to let me know. I'm happy to talk to anybody about it at any time. And also vice chair. We haven't had a vice chair all year, but if anybody's willing to step up for that for next year, that's open as well.
Why don't you issue a news release saying that Eastgate is looking for new members for its citizen advisory board? Just something short,
Yep.
you know, maybe 3 or 4 paragraphs at the most, write it in a journalistic style and send it out to all the local media. And you'll be surprised if you do their work for them, the local media will run what you send them almost verbatim, especially if it's brief and to the point and in a journalistic style.
Great comment,
I'm
Pete.
gonna get the next group, EAG, do something along the way.
Okay, yeah,
See if they can get something out before.
yeah.
We get about the interns down there. Yeah, so.
The other thing I have is next year's meeting schedule. Well, obviously, we've been on this new one for a couple of years now. So January, February, April, May, July, August, October, November. I've on this slide put on some tentative topics that we'll cover. January is traditionally when we have Jim Kinnick in here, our executive director, to kind of talk about what we've done in the last year and provide a preview update for what's to come in the year ahead. So that's always kind of a fixed date. In February, Stephanie Dyer and Ed Davis from our office would like to come back in and talk about the Clean Ohio programs and OPWC, which is the Ohio Public Works Commission. OPWC is like bread and butter infrastructure. That's road paving, that's like sewer and water. Interesting stuff, but can kind of get a little muddy and routine. Clean Ohio is that program we were talking about previously, where Mill Creek and Trumbull County were recommended for funding through that. April 3rd is our Transportation Improvement Program review. That's typically coordinated with our public meeting for our updated tip. So that'll be a good one with a lot of new information for our upcoming transportation projects. And then May is the last one we kind of have a tentative topic for. We'll have Mark Ragazine in to talk about the comprehensive economic development strategy, because this year is a new plan year. So that's being built from the ground up again. Bless you. Mark will also give some updates on our broadband work, because we've got a lot of projects ongoing for that and a few more that'll be coming online here in the next couple of months. But as we look out into the later part of the year, July, August, October, November, really nothing lined up yet. So if there's something you're interested in hearing about, let me know. I'm happy to kind of pull something together. Like to do another kind of field visit, field trip thing like we did before. You know, picking on Ben to see maybe if there's something in Hubbard. So maybe we'll line that up. But
Absolutely.
so yeah, still to come, plan for that offsite meeting. We'll schedule some topics for the remaining meetings. Another thing that I wanted to throw out there, and obviously people have had things to get to, but the time for this meeting at 6 o'clock. Just want to reconfirm that that works for everyone. You feel good about it. It doesn't interfere too much with your Thursday nights, but yeah. Always open to suggestions. You know, we're a pretty flexible group and I think pretty reasonable. So I think we could bring anything to anyone and talk through it and make it work if we need to think about some changes. So
That's it for me. Any comments?
With the new administration coming in January, do you think some of the funding will be affected?
So this is a great question, and one that we get pretty often is, how is Eastgate impacted by elections in general? Obviously, the big one to think about is federal decisions. Priorities change, you know, depending on who has the levers of power. You know, focus areas change, legislation may change. And, you know, at this point, we don't know what that direction is going to be yet. So we keep doing the work that we do until we have to pivot. So just like with this past administration, the project that Grant was talking about was funded through legislation, the bipartisan infrastructure law. That didn't exist before the last administration, something that we pivoted to. We do a lot more applications to discretionary grant programs now than we ever have in the past, just because that was the wind in the direction from the federal side. Instead of throwing money behind formula programs where they bolster our regular funding, we now have to compete for it through applications with organizations like ours across the country. Chances are that's not going to change. Discretionary funding is really attractive to the feds because I think it's easier on them. It's just a shot in time. They can make a decision, hand you your money, and let you go and run. Not something that they have to keep an eye over you and keep tabs on. So I'd expect a little more discretionary funding. What those focus areas will be, I don't have an answer for that.
And some of this funding, unless they claw back this program for the next couple of years.
Absolutely.
Like, yeah, for like at the airport, our bipartisan infrastructure law, our funding is already scheduled for 25 and 26 through September 27. So
When it comes to state level things, we have a good relationship with folks at the State House that we talk to all the time. So we kind of have our finger on the pulse of the direction of where things in the state are going to go. Obviously, housing is a huge topic, and I think that's why you see us pushing a little more in that direction. I don't see that changing a whole lot. And then there's local elections too, right? You have new faces, maybe some returning faces from time before. So local priorities may change, but part of our efforts are always to extend an invitation to those new folks that are in new positions, let them know what we do and how we do it, because how we do it is a really important part of the process. We're a pretty rigid and fixed and tightly required organization that has procedures and policies that we have to follow regardless of who wants to make their voice heard. So long answer to say, yes, we are impacted, not greatly though. Our work continues. We have a great staff here that's always able to be flexible and take a look at the situation and make sure that it works for our local communities.
all right, that in mind, we're going to adjourn. So everybody enjoy your holidays and stay safe. We'll see you in January.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, so back in, it's like right when it was closing, a company